So which graph represents a negatively skewed distribution? A negatively skewed is when you have the tail end pointing to the left. And so that's option C. Option D would be positively skewed, and option A would be symmetrical. Which of the following could be the graph of negative y equals negative 2x plus 2? So first of all, note the negative gradient. So A and B have negative gradients, whereas C and D are positive, so we can knock them out. And then notice this positive 2 here, which is the y-intercept. So A has a positive y-intercept, B has a negative y-intercept, so it can't be B, and so the answer must be A. The network diagram shows the time needed for each step in order to complete a project. What is the critical path? So the critical path is the path that has no float time. So remember, the float time is the latest start time minus the earliest start time. So let's have a look at this path and highlight the path where the float time equals 0. So we start here and we go in this direction because this has a float time of 0. Then we move in this direction because this also has a float time of 0. And then we go to the end. This has a float time of 0. And so that path is A, D, G. So that leads us to answer option B. Lily wanted to estimate the number of fish in a lake. She randomly captured 30 fish and tagged them and then released them. 1 week later, she randomly captured 40 fish. Out of those 40, she found that 12 of the 40 were tagged. What is the best estimate for the total number of fish in the lake? So we're going to use the capture-recapture technique. So we're going to let X represent the total number of fish. Now, because she originally tagged 30, the probability of X fish being tagged is 30 over X, because out of those X that are in the lake, she tagged 30 of them. And that needs to be equivalent to the probability of the tagged that were from the captured 40 fish. So because out of the 40, 12 of those were tagged, these probabilities are equivalent. So the probability of the originally captured ones should equal the probability of the recaptured ones. Now we just solve for the value of X. So we cross multiply. So we have X by 12 is 12X, and then 30 by 40 is 1200. Dividing both sides by 12, we get X equals 100. And so remember, X represents the total number of fish in a lake, and so the answer is 100. Consider the following data set. Which row of tables shows how the mean and median are affected when a score of 5 is added? Let's find the mean before we add the 5. So we're going to add these numbers together and divide it by the total number of numbers, which is 6. So that gives us 18. Let's also find the median before we add 5. So that's the middle score. So it's going to be right here in between the two 17s, which is 17. Now let's look at how this changes when we add the 5. The new average is going to be 5 plus all the other numbers. This time we divide by 7 because there are 7 scores. So that gives us an average of 16.1. So we can see how it changed from 18 to 16.1. So the mean changes. So we'll knock off B and C. Let's look at the new median. So the new median is the middle score. So we cross off 1 by 1, leading us to the middle score of 17. So the median hasn't actually changed. So the median stays the same. And so that's answer option D. What is 20 minutes to 1/3 of a day expressed as a ratio? So if we're going to put 20 minutes and 1/3 of a day in a ratio, they need to be in the same units. So let's get 1/3 of a day in minutes. So 1/3 of 24 hours is 8 hours. And then 8 hours into minutes, we times that by 60, gives us 480 minutes. Now we can put 20 in the ratio to 480. Simplifying this, we divide both sides by 20, so we get 1 to 24, and so the answer is B. Tim is paid $20.45 per hour, as well as a meal allowance of $16.20 a day. What are her total earnings if she works 9 hours per day for 5 days? So let's look at what she's getting paid. So she's getting paid $20.45 per hour. She works for 9 hours and for 5 days. So that gives us 920.25. Now, she's also got a meal allowance of $16.20. We times that by 5 for the 5 days. So that's 81. And so the total is just going to be the addition of these two. So that's 1001.25. And so that's answer option C. Which true bearing is the same as south 48 degrees west? So let's just draw that on a bearing really quickly. So northeast, southwest. So south 48 degrees west is going to be over here, and this angle here is going to be 48 degrees. So true bearing always starts from north. So starting north, and moving this way, this would be the true bearing. So that's going to be 180 degrees plus this 48 degrees, because we've moved this much, which is 180, plus an extra 48 degrees. So 180 plus 48 is 228. So that would be the true bearing. An object is projected vertically into the air. Its height, h meters above the ground, after t seconds is given by this equation, and that's what's drawn over there. So for how long is the object at a height of 300 meters or more above the ground? So we look at the y-axis. This gives us an indication of the height, and we can see how the height changes as time goes on. So if we're looking for a height of 300 meters, we bring this across, means we're looking over here, and then or more, we're also looking at this region here, all the way when it goes back down to 300. So basically between 6 seconds and 10 seconds, it is at 300 or above 300. So that's a total of 4 seconds. And so that's why the answer is A. Alex purchased 800 shares. The total cost was $260 per share. He sold the shares 1 year later for $340 each and paid a fee of $24.95 for selling them. So what profit did he make? So the profit is going to be the income on the shares minus the cost of the shares. So if we look at the income is what money he got for the shares. So when he sold them for $3.40 and there were 800 shares. So the income was $2,720. Now the cost was the cost of buying the shares. So that's the 260 times 800 plus the cost that he had to pay when he sold them. So the $24.95. So that's the 2,104.95. So the income was 2,720 minus the cost 2,104.95, and that gives us 615.05, and so that's answer option B. In 10 years, the future value of an investment will be 150,000. The interest rate is 4% per annum, compounding half yearly. Which equation gives the present value of the investment? So the present value is going to be the future value over 1 plus r to the power of n. So we know the future value to be 150,000. Now it's compounding half yearly, so that means the rate is going to be 4% divided by 2. So that's going to be 2%. As a decimal, that's 0.02. So that's going to be 1 plus 0.02. And because it's over 10 years, the value of n is going to be 10 times 2, because once again, it's compounding half yearly. So the value of n is going to be 20. And so that's why the answer is D. For a particular course, the recorded data shows the relationship between the number of hours studied and the marks achieved. And so that's given in this equation here, where M is the mark and H is the hours you study. So this shows the relationship between the hours you study and the marks you get. So which of these is correct? So if we look at option A, it says that the predicted mark, so it will be 3 for 0 hours of study. So let's sub in 0 into H and see what we get. So M equals 20 plus 3 lots of 0. Simplifying that, we get 20 plus 0, which is 20. So it's saying that the mark will be 3 for 0 hours of study, but we see the mark is 20 for 0 hours of study, so it can't be A. Looking at option B, it will be 20 for 0 hours of study, and that indeed is correct, as we saw before. So B is the answer. A random variable is normally distributed with the mean of 0 and standard deviation of 1. The table gives the probability that this random variable lies below z for some positive values of z. So the probability values given in the table are represented by the shaded area. What is the probability that a normally distributed variable with a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1 lies between 0 and 1.49? So if we think about what that looks like as an area, so if I just draw your normal distribution curve, so we're looking between 0, which is here, and 1.94, which is roughly here. And because we're looking between them, we're looking for this area here. Now the values in the table give us from, say, 1.94 all the way down, right? We just want, as we showed before, from between 0 and 1.94. So if we just want to find this area here, what we need to do is take the red area and subtract this purple area here, which is the excess that we don't want. So the red area can be given from the table because the table looks at below z. So if we look at 1.94, the probability is 0.9738. And so that's going to be, like we mentioned, all this red area here. Now the purple is just going to be half, because this area represents exactly half of the probability because it's cut at 0. So the purple would just be 0.5. If we subtract those two values, we get just what's in between 0 and 1.94, which is 0.4738, and so that's answer option B. Which of the following correctly expresses x as a subject? So what we're going to do first is multiply 2 to both sides. So that's going to be 2y equals ax minus b. Then we're going to add b to both sides. So it's going to be 2y plus b equals ax. Then we're going to divide by a because we're trying to make x the subject. So that's 2y plus b all over a equals x. And so that's why the answer is A. The cumulative frequency graph shows the distribution of a number of movie downloads by 100 people in 1 month. And so this is the cumulative frequency. So if we're trying to match the correct box plot, what we want to look for first of all is the median. Now, if there are 100 people, the median is going to be at the 50th person. So we go down to 50 and let's bring this across to find what the median is. And so we see the median is at 6. So we look at our answer options, and it can't be B and it can't be D because the median is incorrect. The next thing we can look for is the first quartile. Well, because half the scores are at 50, then the upper halves are going to be between 0 and 50, which is at 25. And 25 is roughly about here. We bring that across and we're looking at a score of 3. So Q1 is 3, and so this line here marks your Q1. And so you can see that A is not at 3, it's at 3.5. Whereas C is at 3 and is the correct answer.